Hi everybody, my name is Bill from the Whiskey Dictionary, and welcome to the Whiskey Vault. You would imagine that having run a YouTube channel about whiskey for 10 years, I get asked the question, what is your favorite whiskey all the time? And over the last few years, my answer has actually been Old Forester 1920. Now, that's thinking only in terms of bourbon. If we're talking Scotch, it's something completely different. We'll talk about that another time. Old Forester, in almost all of its incarnations, is something worth having on your shelf. The 86 is really budget friendly, the 100 makes great cocktails, the whole Whiskey Rose series makes awesome sippers. But not only is it delicious, it also has a pretty cool history, because it was only one of 6 distilleries that were allowed and given a permit to be sold as medicinal whiskey during the dark times of Prohibition. And this whiskey is an homage to that time. All whiskey needed to be put in the barrel at 100 proof, and after the Angels took their share, the proof would be around 115, which is reflected here on this bottle. Now this whiskey has a mash bill of 72% corn, 18% rye, and 10% barley. Boy, I am gonna just finish this guy off. You know what? It's a special episode, may as well finish it with a special dram. Now, admittedly, this thing has certainly opened up about as much as it possibly can, considering it's empty. So the nose here has really matured. It's mellowed out a little bit, so some of my nosing notes might not match yours if you're just cracking a bottle, but give it a little time and I bet that you'll get there. So let's go ahead and give it a nose. For me, the most prevalent thing I'm getting here is a beautiful cherry flavor, but there's also chocolate with it as well, which does lend itself to the idea of a chocolate-covered cherry. But it's even sweeter than that, because there's typical bourbon notes, but they're all kind of accentuated with that really high corn mash bill. You're getting a lot of sweetness here. And I'm smelling honey, vanilla, caramel, toffee, but there is one extra thing that I really think puts this over the top compared to a lot of other bourbons. There is almost, I hesitate to say musty because it has the negative connotation, so call it yeasty. It's almost like a bread. It's kind of a very significant nose. So let's go ahead and have a taste. Cheers. Man, every time that I sip this, I am reminded why I keep giving this as my answer of my favorite bourbon, right? This is something that it just tastes so good, but it's also important to know, if you are drinking this along with me, or if you're gonna go buy yourself a bottle, this will drink hotter than 115 the first time that you take a sip of this. It's gonna punch you in the mouth, and that's totally fine. Give it a little bit of time to open up, maybe add a little bit of water, and you're gonna discover a few different flavors here. So for me, the main flavor I'm getting is orange and wood. But as you dig into it a little bit more, there's a little bit of a corn musty note that in my mind is relevant to the bread that I was smelling. However, the last thing that you're going to taste, well, there's 2 things that you're going to taste last, but the first one is going to be kind of a cherries. I'm going to say cherries Jubilee, even though it sounds a little pretentious, because in my mind, I'm tasting cherries and I'm tasting kind of a creamy flavor. And when I mash them together, this is kind of how I do notes. Cherries and cream is either going to be like a cherry ice cream or cherries Jubilee. So that is something I'm tasting here. See if you can find it. Let me know in the comments if you can. After that, the last thing I'm tasting on the finish here is the rye percentage coming out in the form of a minty flavor. This is mostly on the finish. You're going to be tasting mint, and then it's going to kind of leave you with a tannic flavor of that wood. That's a little bit drying of the tongue, and that's mostly coming from the alcohol as well as the tannins from the barrel. Let's talk about my overall opinion of the Old Forester 1920. Now, when I think about the fact that I have a few hundred bottles behind me and probably another 50 or so over there, and when I come down here, and this is a little peek behind the curtain, usually I come down here in order to edit or film or write or do something productive. And more times than I can count, I've just kind of picked this bottle up and gone right back upstairs. That should be a sign of a good whiskey. Something that can really derail you from something that you're supposed to be doing. So for me, this gets a rating of stock it, and this will definitely be on my shelves all the time. For you, I think it should probably be a buy it, unless maybe you don't really like high proof bourbons. And I suspect if you're watching the Whiskey Vault, you probably do. So for me, I really suggest that you pick this one up. I love it. I'm going to buy it again. And I guess that's really it. It just gets my high rating of approval, whatever you want to consider that. All right. If you want to see anything else that I do here on YouTube, you can find my channel, The Whiskey Dictionary, pretty much all over the place. I've done several hundred reviews at this point. And on behalf of the Whiskey Vault, I want to say thank you all for being here. Cheers.